From the Homestead Studios in Santa Clarita, California, it's Just the Tip-Sters with Melissa Morgan.
Hakuna ma motherfucking Tata.
Just back from the caterer with a giant bag full of MURDERTIZER, an appetizer of murder. Today with a quick but exciting update on the search for alleged white killer Peter Chadwick. Remember, if you've got a tip for Melissa, call the Tipster hotline at 832-TIPSTER. That's 832-847-7837. Or send an email to jttipsters@gmail.com. You just might hear your tip on the podcast. And now here's your host, bringing tidings of great joy and a gift-wrapped copy of the Miranda Rights Disclaimer, Melissa Morgan.
More cowbell? Was that just back from the caterer?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I should probably never tell you that I want it to be a MURDERTIZER because then it's going to be funny food intro, but I appreciate you going the extra mile. So
yeah.
This is going to be a shortened version. This is a MURDERTIZER, an appetizer of murder, because we will have a extended version of this update when we get to interview a remarkable dude.
Yeah.
So I
Oh, wait, honey, before you start?
Yeah.
We got this. This is required. Hold on.
Yeah, that's vitally important.
I thought so.
That you use the news theme.
Yes.
The breaking news theme.
It's breaking news.
And if you ever call me honey again, I'm going to report you to HR.
Oh.
So we should get that. We should get that on the books right now.
Okay.
You're in more trouble than you know. That's all I'm saying. So thank you for the breaking news theme, producer Mark, because I would have forgotten that. And I, in my excitement, so I'm grateful.
There is breaking news, and it's very exciting.
It is breaking
news.
Yeah, we broke it. I broke all the news. No, I didn't. What I meant actually physically broke it.
I'll go get the broom.
Yeah, no, I need to sweep some shit up. I'm kidding, not really. So, yeah, Monday morning is one of those things where, like, do you remember where you were when you heard? So Monday morning, I was doing really exciting podcast hosting duties. I was folding laundry, and
it's part of the contract that.
Yes, yeah, it was part of the contract I had to sign with myself to fold laundry, and about 10:01. I remember it like it's an earthquake because it did kind of quake open my world. We have a very lovely friend named Matt Johnson who hosts a true crime podcast, which you have heard the promo for, True Crime Deadline. And he is a news reporter for a local Fox affiliate in Los Angeles. And he texted me and said, that guy you covered his case, they caught him. And I was like, what? So here's the background of a little bit of that. And we're going to get back to that in a second. But I did a rather vitriolic episode of Just the Tipsters. It aired, I think it was June 3rd, something like that is when it dropped.
I would call it justifiable indignance.
Well, that's why you are producer Mark, and amazing and wonderful and very good to me and supportive, because I honestly don't remember how being more angry in most of my life. And I remember asking producer Mark when we had finished, like, oh shit, should we even air that one? Because I just felt like, I will end you. I felt like steam coming out of my pupils. And anyway,
you could have fried an egg on her forehead.
a steak. I think you could have fried a very thick steak on my forehead. I was hot. You can say I was hot. So, a little bit of background. This case of Q-Chi Chadwick, her nickname is QC, was covered by 48 Hours. And producer Mark and I saw it, and I was like, oh, just, it's one of those things that makes you angry because you see what could have been so easily handled and was so not handled well. A man who sloppily kills his wife. They both work from home while two of their three sons were at school. One son was away at school, private school. Two of their sons are at school. He kills his wife. He leaves with her body in her SUV. And the boys get off, of school and they don't have a ride home. So they call a neighbor who takes them home. The neighbor can sense something's weird. One car's gone. No one's answering. So she asks for a welfare check. And the police come in and find, signs of a struggle. There's a problem, blah, blah, blah. 19 hours later, Peter Chadwick calls from Lakeside, California, which is just across the border from Mexico at the tip of San Diego, saying that he had been kidnapped by two day laborers that he had hired and that they had killed his wife for no reason and kidnapped him, forced him to drive them around with her body in the car until they got too close to Mexico. And then they quote unquote escaped his grasp.
The story is hilarious if it weren't so horrible what he did.
Right. And horrible is a great word, Producer Mark, because he dumped her body in a dumpster, and to his unbelievably bad chagrin, the owners of the property were in a fight with the waste management company that empties the dumpsters, and the dumpster should have been emptied that day. And a Orange County sheriff found her body. They had looked through alleys and fields and gas fields and couldn't find her. And on the fifth day, found her in the dumpster, wrapped in a blanket, and only because of his bad luck, because she could have been, removed, and we would never know. I mean, we would know he did it, but we wouldn't know where she was. So this case was just hounding me. It was clawing at me at night, and I was so angry. And I'm not a those of you who have listened know that I'm bordering on being a Luddite. It's not like I could go online and find where had Peter Chadwick run to. He had access to a huge amount of money, and what we will find out is a network of people willing to hide him. And the Newport Beach police didn't exactly fuck up, but they didn't do a great job. And then the the judge actually at his pretrial hearing really fucked up by lowering his bail amount. So while you and I might have a difficulty coming up with 10% of $1 million, $100,000 to put down and on our $1 million bail, that's pocket change for Peter Chadwick and family. So at one point, his bail was $1.5 million, which would have been, a tiny bit more for him, but then lowered back to $1 million, which he made bail immediately, was out, living in his father's home, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, supposedly. And then the day that he is supposed to, January 5th of 2015, he was supposed to appear in court, and he's long gone, leaving really crappy breadcrumbs. And they've been on his tail the entire time. And a lot of money and time and energy went into finding him. He was put on the U.S. Marshals top 15 most wanted criminals. There was a $100,000 reward for him. And I tried desperately to get a hold of anyone in the Newport Beach police who would talk to me. And I called, I emailed, we happened to be staying not far from there in May. And I showed up at the police station, bearing gifts, by the way, for...
As you always do.
My mama taught me right. I'm from Kentucky, and you don't show up without a present. So I showed up with some, swag from the show, and couldn't get shit Couldn't get anyone to answer me, to say, you know what? We're not talking to anyone. Go pound sand. Go fuck off. I hate you. Die. Whatever. Nothing. Wouldn't even answer or respond. Phone calls, emails. Sorry, I'm getting mad again. Phone calls, emails, nothing.
Steady.
I know. So I found a blurb in People magazine that caught my eye. And I tracked down this man who was asked to be on the U.S. Marshals Task Force to find Peter Chadwick. He is not with Orange County or with the Orange County Sheriffs or with the Newport Beach Police. He is with the Long Beach Police, and he's a detective, major crimes detective. And he has a good background in finding people. So it was... and I love when producer Mark goes, oh, Melissa spends, 2 or 3 hours researching. And I'm like, I love you, but you don't fucking know how much time I spend. So I had spent 2 weeks prior to the episode working on the Peter Chadwick case. Not 2 weeks solid. I slept and ate and did stuff like that. But it took 2 weeks until we finally recorded it. And I had called Detective Joe Peruse, Long Beach, and left messages for him as just a last resort because I couldn't get a hold of anyone in Newport Beach. And I thought he has to have some idea, or he might tell me to go pound sand, but I would be happy if anyone said anything. So we recorded the episode, and 3 or 4 weeks after that, in late June, I get a call from Detective Peruse, and it must have been a bad hormone day for Melissa, because I went the fuck off, and I was like, well, thanks a lot, fuckface. We recorded the episode 3 weeks ago. We could have used your help then. What is it with fucking cops? Why won't you call me back? Why won't you tell me anything? And in the meantime, I had learned a little bit about why no one would call me back. And it's a really bad reason. Because they had done their own podcast, which is what I railed about in the episode in June about Peter Chadwick, because it's bad. It's a bad podcast. So I'm going to be extremely hypocritical here. I understand law enforcement doesn't particularly want a bunch of armchair detectives, citizen sleuths in their way. They don't want us bugging them, asking questions, calling. They have too much important shit to do, getting in the way in some cases. But you know what? You can't be a two-headed llama. You can't be a push me, pull you. And you can't say, this man's on the run. We need all the help we can get. We're going to put out our own podcast and we will talk to no one else. I read things online where seasoned journalists were so pissed from major outlets, from TV and print, were so pissed because they couldn't even get interviews with the detective in Newport Beach. They couldn't get interviews, so what's my chance? But they put out their own podcast, which is one of the worst things I've ever heard. And I'm not going to be objective because I'm really a picky bitch when it comes to podcasts. I am all about the sound of the host's voice, and you either like it or you don't. And that's why there's 31 flavors at Baskin-Robbins. You don't have to like my voice. I understand completely. I'm not for everyone. But every review I read of their podcast called Countdown to Capture.
Great title.
One of my favorite reviews is Countdown to Nothing. A 1-star review that called it Countdown to Nothing. And besides the reviews saying, I can't take this woman's voice, this is awful, she sounds terrible, the other pieces of information were, this could have been done in one episode. This could have been done in one episode, and they did it in 6. And another listener brought up a fantastic point. If he's on the run and you're really trying to catch him, why don't you roll out all 6 episodes at once as opposed to 1 a week for 6 weeks? I mean,
boy, I hadn't even thought of that.
Yeah, if you're really in a hurry to catch a man, why would you fucking dawdle?
How long was each episode? They were really short, right? Like 20 minutes long or something?
Yeah, you're right. 15 to 20 minutes. They were short. and they were repetitive. And here's the topper. Thank God for Tipster Charlotte, who is an educator, who brought this to my attention as I was bitching as we're walking around downtown LA. I'm like, just so rabid about this fucking awful podcast and the way they treated anyone else who wanted to cover the story. She said, so who hosted the podcast? And I said, their chief information officer, someone named Jennifer. I don't remember her last name. And she said, oh, well, isn't that a conflict of interest? Yes, Tipster Charlotte, you are right. I hadn't even thought of it. If you are going to put out a podcast about a case that's breaking your balls, have a professional podcast voiceover artist do it. It doesn't have to be someone who does a podcast. Have someone with a decent motherfucking voice who knows how to speak, complete sentences, who isn't reading a shitty script that they've written. I feel so bad saying this for this woman, but she needs to. She wrote, produced, and voiced the episodes. And she needs to keep her job as her chief information officer and not, I don't go around trying to solve murders with like a magnifying glass and a deer stalker hat like I'm Sherlock Holmes. And they don't need to let someone like that host a podcast. There had to be someone else. I don't care if it was the janitor, somebody with a better voice and a better way of expressing themselves. Look, you can say whatever you want about me. One thing I know about me, I'm a really good storyteller. I'm not saying they had to hire me. They don't know me from Adam. But
yes, they did.
Well, they did after I fucking made a big old stink. But so back to what happened on Monday morning when Matt Johnson texted me that Peter Chadwick had been captured. I started laughing and crying and jumping up and down and trying to find anything I could about him. The video of them extraditing him from Mexico Monday morning to LAX was priceless as they're walking him around the luggage carousel. And here's how he's attempted to change his look. He's grown he's a British national, so he's like kind of an unattractive ginger. And they call it blonde, but it's like blonde, strawberry blonde hair. He has grown a patchy, shitty mustache and a chin vagina, which I think will serve him well in prison. He's going to need a vagina on his chin because I'm going to guess he's going to be eating a bag of dicks every day for the rest of his life is what I'm hoping. But anyway, he looked like he looked like he could be a Civil War reenactor or something because it's real bad facial hair. So I was so overjoyed. I called and left a message on Detective Peruse's email.
And this is the guy from Long Beach.
The Long Beach detective who was asked to join the U.S. Marshals Task Force to find Peter Chadwick.
By the way,
he was
did you really
for 2
call
years.
him fuckface when he first...
I did. I screamed at him, and I'll tell you what happened. I screamed at him and said, I don't know why the fuck you guys can't call a person back. Just tell me to go pound sand, but tell me something. Don't just not return a call, numerous calls. And he was I had only called him once. He knew he was taking the brunt for Newport Beach. He knew it, and he took it like a goddamn champ. And he turns out to be, he's a doll. So I called and left a message and said, did they do it? Did they catch him? I'm crying and laughing and having such a great time. So back to the information that Detective Peruse called me. He called me and I unloaded on him and then said, you know what? All right, not you. You called me back. I mean, it's 6 weeks later. But I mean, he obviously kept the message. He called me 6 weeks later. And I'm like, I recorded this weeks ago, you jerk. And why are your fellow law enforcement brethren such monsters? So he's not a huge fan of how this case was handled at all. And we are really blessed because he called a few weeks ago and he called me and said, would you be interested in doing another episode, an update episode? And I don't know if he knew in the back of his mind they were getting close, but I'm getting a little bit of that vibe from the conversation that we did have on Monday night. We did actually speak on Monday night after the capture. But I said, of course I would. I would be honored to interview you. And he said, I would really like that. And I think he thought maybe he would still be on the run. And we were going to do an interview in October because the other love of his life is coaching football, I guess. And his like little league football, and his season would be over in October. So he goes, let's do it in October. And he came up with great ideas of where to record it, and, had options of where we could record it for good sound. He's like, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. And I think he was, thinking about the Countdown to Capture podcast, which, by the way, doesn't have a bad sound. It's just a bad podcast. It's just bad all the way around. And he said that the marshals were not happy with that. I don't think he'd mind me telling you that. They were not happy with the podcast. And it's a difficult place to be in. You want people to give you information, but you don't want to tell people information. I kind of get how, walking a fine line you must be able to do when you're in law enforcement. You need to be able to tell people some information, like who they're looking for, but you can't give away too many things that might jeopardize a future case and trial. I get it. But Detective Peruse has been a stand-up guy. He has kept things from me and then later explained why he did, and he has been forthcoming in every way he could be, which is phenomenal. And after our first conversation, when I got done yelling at him and he was laughing and saying, I understand. It was funny the way he took it, And I finally said, all right, look, it's not you. You called me back. But we kept talking, and I gave him some ideas and theories, of which I have, not many. But we talked about the case because I am the detail freak. I do love the details. And at one point he said to me, you should have been a cop. And I laughed because I was so flattered and taken aback at the same time. And I said, no, I wouldn't be good at that. I cry too much. And he got really quiet and he said, me too, Melissa. And I thought, he's my new boyfriend. I mean, I know.
Yet another boyfriend. I'm keeping tabs. Okay, I marked that one off.
He's married and you're married, but he can be my, my law enforcement boyfriend. But he's fantastic. And he's done a lot of work with gangs in Long Beach. And he's also apparently really adept at finding large amounts of weaponry. So he finds things and he finds people. And that's why they asked him to join the U.S. Marshals Task Force. He wasn't even in the area or the jurisdiction of Peter Chadwick. But this is how, he's in a different county and definitely removed law enforcement jurisdiction-wise, of Peter. He told me the nicest thing on Monday night when we got a chance to catch up. He said, he called me Monday night and said, how the hell did you find out? And I said, well, I happen to have a friend who's in the news biz. And he said, yeah, I was taking a nap. I had to deliver early morning warrants more than I'd ever in my career. And I was taking a nap. And he said, but I will tell you, I remember where I was. And he was talking to me from his driveway. And he said, I was exactly where I am now. When 5 years ago, when they called me and said, hey, the chief wants to talk to you. Would you be part of this task force? And you could tell he still loved that moment. And he's another, we've had the really great luck to talk to several law enforcement, members who are just mensches. They're good people. But they all have a similar story, and that there's that one case. There's that one case that they just can't get off their back. And Joe Peruse, I think, felt Peter Chadwick was his white whale. He's Moby Dick. And, he's I think he said like 5 years maybe from retirement. And he's like, oh yeah, I've already got plans. I get cases he's already, he will retire and then not. He will retire and then go back to work as a consultant or work on cold cases. You can hear it in his voice. You can feel it in how he says it. He means it. It's in his body. So we're really, really blessed that we're going to get to interview him. But the update, lest I forget the important details, the update in this Murdertizer is that they fucking caught Peter Chadwick. And he was apparently in Mexico the entire time. And he had left these horrible breadcrumbs. And I know they looked for him in many other countries, according to Detective Peruse. Many other countries. A lot of money had been spent.
I'm sure he had a lot of help.
Oh, and what is a beautiful thing is Detective Peruse said that the DA plans on filing charges against everyone who helped him. Now, our first conversation, when Detective Peruse said, he has a lot of help. And I'm like, what do you mean? He has an old dad who's, rich, but he's old. What is he going to do? And he, gave me some information that maybe he shouldn't, but he did, and I was grateful. But I finally just said, oh my God, it sounds like the Underground Railroad. And he's like, what? And I was like, it sounds like Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad. And he started laughing. He's like, oh, you're right. So he said that he told his partner at the U.S. Marshal's office, I think he has an Underground Railroad. And his partner said, what are you talking about? And he said, during the slave days in the South, he has a network of people who are helping him move around. And I love the fact that the DA wants to press charges against everyone that has helped, foster or help a fugitive, a murdering fugitive.
Really?
I love that. So not only are they, feeling the sting of lowering his bail and letting him get out, they're now coming after him with all barrels. So apparently Peter Chadwick felt the pressure from the 48 hours, maybe from the shitty podcast, doubtful from this podcast. I don't know. There are maybe other.
Don't sell yourself short, baby.
There might be other podcasts that have covered it too. But, however someone recognized him or thought about, hey, that guy, apparently he slipped up. I love that Detective Peruse was trying to be polite around me, especially since I'd called him everything but a white man, weeks earlier when he called me back. And I don't think he's white, but I called him everything, not great. And he said he stepped on his own and he stopped and he's like, member. And I go, you can say dick. And he goes, yeah, he stepped on his own dick. So he stepped on his dick on Saturday night. And by Sunday morning, they had a line on him. And by Sunday night, they had arrested him. So Detective Peruse knew Sunday night they were going after him. And they brought him back Monday morning. They arrested him Sunday night and they extradited him Monday morning. And he shows up at LAX. And he had been apparently in Mexico the entire 4.5, almost 5 years. He had left shitty breadcrumbs that he was going to Canada. He'd even told his oldest son, look, I'm going to go walk across the border either to the south or to the north and get low-paying jobs and blend in to offset, the financial part. Tells his son, this is what I'm going to do. And his son tells the police after he jumps bail. And apparently he ended up, one of his jobs was bussing tables. And that makes me really happy. Really, really happy. Apparently he started off living in high-end resorts, but they needed a passport. They wanted to see a passport. Maybe things are getting a little better in Mexico where I have to be honest, I was shocked because, they typically don't extradite someone, even a murderer. Obviously, if they're going to have the death penalty, it's like,
right.
Right. Our bookends on either end of the United States, Canada, and Mexico. if you're gonna execute someone, then they won't extradite them back. But Peter Chadwick's original charge or sentence had been, if he had gotten through his trial without jumping bail, 25 years to life. So they extradited him with a quickness, and he shows up at the airport with federal marshals on either side, looking like he just got done in his role playing of, General Assface in the, Civil War. So it's a really amazing thing that he ended up, going from fancy pants, resorts to ending up in hostels, working weird, odd jobs, bizarre, odd jobs. But it makes me happy that that's where he ended up. And he ended up in a small town, Puebla, Mexico, which is sort of eastern central. It's southeast of Mexico City. So it's not, Puerto Vallarta or anything like that on the coast. It's kind of in the middle. And it's apparently a lovely, ironically, it's kind of listed on travel sites as one of Mexico's hidden gems. So I guess that's where he needed to be.
Yes, he consulted his travel guide before he went, I'm sure.
Yes, he paid a lot of money to his travel agent. Hey, where can I go? They won't find me because I killed my wife, which is,
I'm sure he said it just like that.
Just like that, probably. So the really good news, besides the fact that we will have a full-length episode, an interview with Detective Joe Peruse, is that he, this time, is denied bail. So his rich family can't come in and say, oh, we'll put an ankle bracelet on him, ankle cuff on him, not an ankle bracelet, one with like an ohm symbol or something, an ankle bracelet on him, that he, no, he's denied motherfucking bail. Thank God this time. And his
how unfair.
I will tell you that Detective Peruse and I had a bet on Monday night. He said, I think he's going to get like a $25 million bail. And I was like, no, he can come up with 2.5 million. And he said, I know, I just think they're going to give him a number. So denied bail, fucking finally. And his attorney said, I reserve the right to ask for bail later. You can ask for it all you want, shithead. Hopefully he's not going anywhere. But here is the quote from Detective Peruse that captured me, no pun intended, in People magazine and made me decide to reach out to him. He said, here's a guy next door. And in one part, he's an American success story. And the other part, he's an American nightmare, using his intelligence and wealth to avoid capture. And he said, I believe that he was planning this from the minute he was arrested.
Wow.
I know. This is why Detective Peruse is the special guy he is. I think he's got an insight, and, he, like I said, he didn't even know about the case until they said, hey, would you join the task force? And he was like, oh, yeah. And he said to me, when he saw how they did things, he wanted to cry. He was like, this is where I should have always been. He loves that they have everything at their disposal, to find people. And yet 4.5 years later, and maybe 48 hours, or maybe their shitty podcast, or maybe somebody who just wanted $100,000 got him captured. But whatever it is, sweet, sweet revenge. And more cowbell.
And remember, if you'd like to become a patron of the podcast, go to patreon.com/justthetipsters. Give us a call at 832-847-7837 or send an email to jttipsters@gmail.com.